Well, let's continue now. So as the festive season approaches, many South Africans are really taking a closer look at their budgets and adjusting their plans. Well, according to a recent survey that suggests that whilst most households are feeling some level of financial pressure, people are responding by prioritizing essentials and making practical choices. So festive plans are being simplified for many people, with food and groceries emerging as the main focus for households this December. So we're going to take a closer look at what that survey really reveals about festive spending, changing habits, and how South Africans can navigate the festive season. Annaline van der Poel, Debt Rescue COO, joins us now virtually. Annaline, good morning and welcome to the SABC. Thank you for your time.
Good morning, Liesl. Good morning to the viewers, and thank you for having me.
Right, so it's the festive season, and we're obviously looking at the realities on the ground. And so, based on the survey now, perhaps you can give us some key insights, because when 94% of respondents report financial strain, I mean, ultimately, what is that really revealing about the state of household finances right now?
It's telling us what I think we've known, and it's just been reiterated in the fact that South African consumers are struggling financially. They have been doing so for a significant period of time, and it's just now being verbalized and put out there in facts and in research to confirm what we know. They are struggling because of the high cost of living. Yes, the interest rates have come down slightly this year, but unfortunately, with the other cost of living items such as electricity, fuel going up and down, South Africans just don't have any space in their budgets to move around, and they're really struggling at the moment.
Well, Annaline, to your point, when more than 2/3 of the respondents say that they're just coping or they're under severe pressure, we need to look at the main drivers behind that, but also how food has then emerged as the biggest festive stressor. Why would groceries be hitting households harder than any other costs at this point?
Well, we've got to remember that even though we've seen that inflation is finally sitting at the lower end of the original benchmark of 3 to 6%, what makes up that 3-point-something% each month is one of the key contributors that pushes it to the higher end has been food inflation. So food inflation is way above that 3-point-something%. And what that means is that for us who have to feed our families every month, we are having to look at finding alternative or cheaper methods in how we buy groceries. And it's becoming a real stressor because we're seeing that people are, obviously increasing in being malnourished, having to really struggle to find affordable manners in which to still maintain, having the necessary food items in their baskets every month. And we've seen a lot of research from PMB EJD, where they are telling us that the food prices continue to rise, especially on the critical items that we need in our basket every month.
Well, Annaline, speaking about necessities as well, I mean, we're looking at how people are going to then be celebrating, right? Finding those reasons to celebrate. And 65% of the respondents have changed or they've cancelled their festive plans. And so what does this then say about how South Africans are redefining what celebration means this year?
Well, I think it's one of those things where South Africans are looking to what historically may have been the manner in which we celebrated. And now we're turning to more cost-effective, more conscious in terms of not making it about money, but more about time. So it's definitely going to have an impact. Ultimately, like I say, in the past, it may have been a family hosting the rest of the family. Now it's going to be a question of perhaps smaller family gatherings or asking everybody to contribute in some way or another, that it doesn't just fall on one household, because it could become a very, very expensive exercise when we have as many people over, and we try and obviously make sure that we keep it as festive as possible, but realizing that it's a very important time for family, but it doesn't have to be about the finance or the significance expenditure that goes with it.
Yeah, because that then also, if done irresponsibly or, if you're not careful, I mean, festive season can also worsen long-term financial struggles as well. And then December actually could be quite a risky period for that debt. Can you perhaps also explain a little bit more on that front?
Well, we have two key elements here is the fact that obviously many people get paid early in December. So it means that this is the longest 6 weeks between two paydays. So if you normally get paid at the end of the month and you got paid in the middle of the month in December, it's roughly 6 weeks until you get paid again. So that already places a lot of strain. And then if you are having to obviously go into expenses for this festive season, buying of gifts, having celebrations, etc., that places an enormous strain on us as households. So careful planning is so critical at this point. And I think it's very positive that we are seeing that people are already cognizant of that and trying to avoid those January blues that could potentially end up.
Yeah, and there's also that emotional short-term relief that comes with financial health as well over the long term. So navigating that and one's dignity as well, it's really something that has to be looked into. But I wonder if we're looking at practical advice, solutions on the cards as well, because if we look at the festive season, after December, you've got January, schools, for those who have families as well. I mean, they have to also then prioritize and incorporate that as well. What are those practical steps that people need to be adhering to?
I think the most important right now is to have a plan. That terrible thing most of us don't want to do, and that's budget. We have to look at realistically what funds do we need in January. For example, like you mentioned, school fees, any annual subscriptions we might have that become due, upfront in January, and budget for them right now. And ideally, especially if you've been paid early, is to move those funds into a separate account and keep them there so that you don't end up with a scenario where it's very tempting. You see it in your bank balance and you're doing head math, and maybe sometimes we forget, oh gosh, I've still got to budget for this item or that item. Work it out, plan, move those funds to one side so that you know that you aren't tempted, and move your funds for the festive season specifically into another account, and only use those funds for that and nothing else. But the key item here is planning. It's all about planning. Be cognizant of every time you tap, swipe, if you withdraw cash, what are you using it for, and stick to that plan.
Annaline, how different does this December feel compared to previous years?
I think the fact that we are already seeing such immediate feedback from consumers post the Black Friday month expenditure, it does feel like South Africans are a lot more cognizant. I think they really are aware of what their situation is, what the state of everybody's personal finances are. And I think it feels a little bit different in the way that we're going in, pretty much with our eyes wide open here. We know what we're going in for, and that we are aware of the expenses that come with this period. I think it's just going to be a question of making sure that we stick to these plans that we have, and start being open with the people around us, our loved ones, the ones we spend time with, and say to them, listen, this is the budget that I have. This is what I can stick to. And people seem to really be moving more and more towards that, and the awareness of what their financial situation is.
So Annaline, if we're looking at next year and even predictions as well, any reprieves that we can expect, the shifting geopolitical landscape as well, what are some of those factors that we should be looking out for ahead of, and how it's going to be impacting the economy at large?
Well, there's a lot obviously that remains unknown, and the items that we think we can predict, and then something happens and it turns into another way. But some of the things we're going to have to look at that could potentially have an impact on us is what's happening obviously globally. Any pressures from any disruptions, any wars, anything to that effect. In what way would it potentially affect us? And usually that comes in the form of effects on oil prices, that affects our fuel and transport. So those are the kind of things that unfortunately are beyond our control completely, but that would give us sort of indicators as to what potentially we could face as well. And then we tend to look at the US, the UK, the EU, looking at their jobless rate figures, seeing what they're looking at, and also looking at specifically what their interest rates are doing. We tend to take our lead to a certain degree from, if they are relaxing their interest rates, but then at the same time, our Reserve Bank is very cautious in just dropping interest rates. They take very calculated global and local factors into account. So a lot to be monitoring. I think a little bit early perhaps for us to make some educated guesses at this point of what we can see.
All right, Annaline. Well, next year, come February, there's a lot more still to come in our country. But for now, we're navigating this festive season. And many South Africans will have to be doing some balancing acts for this December and beyond to survive, for their families to cope. And of course, I'm looking at what lies ahead for the new year. Thank you, Annaline van der Poel, for joining us here. Rescue COO weighing in.